Hello, welcome to the Courageous Self-Care Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we talk about self-care practices that go beyond bubble baths, chocolate, and wine. They are self-care practices that take courage and that can get pretty uncomfortable, and that often we need some guidance for because there are blind spots. But all of it is worth it because they make a gigantic difference. They're totally transformational. So I would love for you, if you are interested, to go to the website, christinamarlette.com, to get a free resource I created for you. It's the top 10 ways that you are likely draining your energy without even knowing it. So go ahead and get that. It's a free mini course, and you will end up more energized. And who doesn't want that? So today we're going to be talking with Lorna Selig about intuition. And it's going to be a fantastic show. Lorna, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Would you like to tell us what you do?
So I have a company called Safe for Life Personal Safety Training, More Than Self-Defense. So I teach men, women, kids, teens, the principles of self-defense, including awareness, confidence, and all of those other peace of mind kinds of skills. So our company teaches self-defense from the perspective of not getting into a scary and dangerous situation to start with.
We're going to dig into that and how it's related to intuition in a moment. Before we do that, though, I would love to hear your favorite self-care practice.
Well, I love bubble baths. And I love wine and chocolate. And so I do indulge, I must say. But honestly, I think one of my favorite self-care practices is to make shifts in my environment and in my conversations to the positive. And so if I'm in a conversation where things are starting to become negative or critical, I make a very concerted effort to shift that to what's the good stuff about this? What's the lessons that we learn in this? And so I do that with my kids, with my spouse, and how is it that we can switch this around so that we can gain the benefits from it? And I find that in terms of self-care, it just lifts me up. It just makes my perspective brighter.
I've interviewed a lot of guests about their self-care practices, and I have never heard that one before. And I love that you labeled that as self-care because, of course, truly, it's going to make you feel so much better. And like you said, the energy goes from low and heavy to light and positive. And what better way to take care of yourself? Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yay. I love it. Okay, so on today's show, we're discussing intuition, which is one of the foundations of courageous self-care. And so, Lorna, you were interested in speaking about intuition as it relates to what you do. So tell us why you think intuition is important and how it relates to your practices.
So, Christina, I believe that intuition really is the cornerstone and the guidepost for any kind of safety practice. And so intuition is our primal response to fear. It always is, every single time. And when we think about intuition and we think about, as adults, how often we justify that feeling and sort of minimize it and we don't listen to it, often that's how we as adults get ourselves into trouble. Right? Or get ourselves into compromising or risky situations because we're not tapping into that intuition. We're not tapping into that gut response of, oh my God, this feels really odd. This feels really uncomfortable. But when we think about children, very young children, and we think about animals, they have the most finely tuned response to instinct and intuition. When you see a child who is reluctant or resistant to hug a relative or a family friend, we need to, as adults and as parents, we need to respect that and respond to that because that right there is that young child's response to their intuition. And that is their own way of protecting themselves. Think about a cat, right? A cat sitting on on a front step, right? And down the street comes a dog, you know, barking away, charging. The cat doesn't sit there and say, oh, it's nothing. What am I getting all spun out about? Oh, for heaven. That cat is gone like a shot. We've all seen it. And when it comes to my company and my business and the principles that we teach in our classes, much of it is focused in and around that intuition and instinct piece, because it is so much embedded in our DNA and in our cell structure that when we listen to it every single time, it will protect us. And, you know, I have police officers that teach my teen and adult classes. And this is the thing that they say: even if you cannot prove it right, it is never, ever wrong. And so when you have that response, even if there's no logical explanation for it, you need to listen to it. You need to listen to it and get out of that situation, because staying there could prove risky and dangerous.
Mm. Yeah, that is some really interesting information. I've, in my journey through understanding and learning to accept and allow and follow my intuition, I have always thought of it not necessarily in response to fear, but I appreciate that you said that. And I know that's where your world is and where you're coming from. And that it is our primary response to fear is fascinating. I haven't thought of that before. So I'm curious, Lorna, have you always been tuned into your intuition, or was there a time when you weren't?
Certainly a time when I wasn't, and a time, well, God, many times when I wasn't. And quite honestly, found myself in compromising situations, whether that is, you know, being physically at risk or making decisions that, you know, really were not supportive of my greatness, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I've had situations, you know, once when I was a teenager where I was in a situation where someone that I knew was trying his darndest to attack and violate me. And my intuition and my instinct at that stage was absolutely on fire. And I minimized it, I dismissed it, and sure enough, got myself into a situation that was completely risky, completely fearful. And that was because I, first of all, wasn't aware of the situation. Secondly, I didn't really have any plan of how I could do it differently. But thirdly, I was just clearly not listening to my intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think our intuition gets louder and louder the more we ignore it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. To the point where gong, you know, you could get a knock over the head. And I mean, yeah, I mean, the risks of not following your intuition are so significant. And lots of times we don't even know how significant until all of a sudden we're in those situations, right?
Right, yes. So I'm curious about how, do you actually have some strategies that you teach your clients on how to follow their intuition?
So we always start with the principles of awareness. So what does it look like to be aware so that you are less likely to be a target, less likely to be a victim? And when you are aware, you have sort of a sense of heightened alertness. And so when you are more alert, you are more tuned in. And so we teach just, and this, you can relate to this, Christina, I mean, just in terms of the body work that you do. So when we walk around with our shoulders back, our chin up, looking confident, looking like we are on purpose, making eye contact, walking, you know, with our heads up, not looking at our phones, and looking like we are on purpose, we have a much more aware sense of heightened awareness of what's going on around us, so that we can tune in to anything that seems strange, anything that seems difficult or a little bit, you know, risky. And then we, especially with kids, and kids are brilliant at this, We
Mhm.
talk with them about, we call it chilly willies when we talk to the children, because it is that, it feels like kind of like butterflies. We talk about that in the back of our neck, on our hips, or in our solar plexus is where we feel those responses, and especially for children. And we talk about that. What does that feel like? When you have that feeling, what should you do? What's the first thing you should do? And how do you let your body know that you trust that it's giving you the right message? So again, we start with the principles of awareness, Christina, just to kind of ensure that people have that heightened, just that hyper sort of vigilance. And I don't mean coming from a fear or paranoid sort of perspective. It's just about taking care of yourself. Similar to when you get into a vehicle, what's the first thing that you do, Christina? When you get into your car, what's the first thing you do?
Well, I say an intention.
Beautiful. I love it. What's the second thing you do?
And then I
Put your seatbelt.
I start the car and then I put my seatbelt on. Yeah.
Perfect. And putting your seatbelt on is your protection mechanism when you're driving your car. And so we like to talk about putting our personal safety seatbelt on when we leave the comfort and safety and confines of our house, because we may never, ever, ever be able to protect ourselves from every single creepo and perpetrator that might be walking down the street. But at least if we have our, if we're armed with that personal protection, and we're aware and we're vigilant and we're prepared for what our instinct might be telling us, we're far less likely to be a victim or a target of any kind of assault or risky situation.
Or even bullying.
Absolutely.
It goes into so many different areas of life. And I can appreciate that, great posture has a lot to do with it. When your shoulders are hunched, you're saying to the world, I'm not confident in myself.
Absolutely.
But when you have your collarbones stretched out and you're, like you said, not on your phone,
Yep.
and sitting tall or standing tall, it makes such a huge difference. So I appreciate that a lot of it happens in the body.
Yeah. And we do a real hands-on, a real tangible sort of exercise for folks where we remind them that you can change your posture from this to this in a matter of a millisecond, right? And so I think it's quite enlightening for folks to recognize that even if you've got lots of, junk going on in your head about, oh my God, I forgot to pay this, and, and my kid's sick and I have this and that. If we take all of that mind chatter out of our brains when we are coming and going in a parking lot or coming and going to work, and set that aside momentarily and put on our seatbelt, our safety seatbelt, we have much more authority and much more confidence to get to where we're going and back again to those that we love without being harmed.
Yes, right. Exactly. If people were curious about where they could learn more about what you're talking about, where would you like to send them? So
our website, www.safe4life.ca. So SAFE 4LIFE.ca.
Perfect. Thank you. And if you would like to be interviewed on the show, I am taking applications. I have lots of space for guest experts, so you can go to ChristinaMarlette.com to do that application. Before we finish, I've got some rapid fire questions for you, Lorna. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. What book are you reading?
I'm reading a book by Joe Dibley called Frock Off. I love it. It's about shedding the masks and the cloaks that keep you hidden and being your real self, authentic self.
Okay, good. What's the last movie you saw?
Last movie I saw was Justice League, and actually I fell asleep in it. So
not highly recommended.
Yeah.
If you're tired and you need some sleep. What's the last place you traveled to?
Last place I traveled was Phoenix for the speaker's retreat. You were there? Yes, Jackie Flanagan and her program. Awesome, awesome.
And last one, you're going to fill in the blank. If everyone did blank, the world would be a better place.
If everyone looked at the sunny side of life, the world would be a better place.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yep. Glass half full.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lorna, and thank you so much for listening. I'm Christina Marlette. We are here every Monday through Friday. Make sure you come back to hear more. And remember to go to ChristinaMarlette.com to get your free gift to boost your energy. And if you'd like to apply to be a guest expert on the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.